And we are back once again.
It's us again, the Horror Guys.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're running late this week.
We're going to watch some horror movies, though. Well, we already watched the horror movies. We're going to talk about the horror movies now.
Yeah. We got some interesting ones this week.
We do. Some old and some very new.
Yeah, a little of both.
This one was so new that we had the privilege of reviewing it before it was cleared for public viewing in the U.S.
It is available now, though.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to look at 4 films and a short, as usual. This time we're going to look at one called Nocturna Side A.
And Side B.
The Great Old Man's Night is Side A.
Oh, yeah, it's got a title after the, yeah.
And Side B is Where the Elephants Go to, or something, I don't remember.
Where the Elephants Go to Die.
Yeah. Okay, then we're going to watch the classic Terror Train from 1980. And then we'll have a 1950s double feature with Attack of the Crab Monsters and Not of This Earth.
And these
from 57.
Really were a double feature, weren't they?
They were released,
these were the two that were paired
They were
together.
a double bill,
If you went to the theaters for a double feature in 1957, you'd see these.
It's true. And now you can see them again. I think they're both available on Tubi. Actually,
Tubi is pretty darn good.
Tubi's really impressing me with their old stuff.
We're not affiliated with them in any way, but boy, we have praise for Tubi. You do have to watch commercials. If you sign up for an account, I guess you see fewer commercials, but then you get more spam email and so forth.
I can deal with the commercials.
Yeah, the commercials are not bad, and lots of stuff to choose from there. TUBI.
Yeah. Speaking of commercials.
Commercials for
us.
As
always, brought to you by the Horror Guys series of books.
We are our own sponsor.
And I'm going to mention right now that we have 4 issues of the Horror Bulletin monthly magazine that are now available. 5th one coming up in a couple weeks. And this is a monthly compilation of all our reviews. Each one contains the same stuff you hear in the podcast, 4 movies and a short usually, plus 2 extra reviews per week. And I think the December issue had 32 reviews, 34 reviews, something like that.
Diggity.
Lots of extra stuff in there.
What a deal.
And, of course, if you're just crazy as we are, there's a word search in the back, too. Always the high point. But, yeah, you can there's a link at the show notes, or you can just go to horrorguys.com/monthly and pick up one of those. Not to mention our regular books, which we'll talk about another time. So, are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
First one is a brand new film, just came out this week, called Nocturna Side A, The Great Old Man's Night. Directed and written by Gonzalo Calzada, stars Pepe Soriano, Marilu Marini, Lautaro Delgado, hour and 47 minutes, and as always, there is a trailer where you can go see the preview for it.
And this is an international film with subtitles.
It was Argentina, wasn't it?
I believe it was,
Or Venezuela?
No, Argentine.
Okay, yeah. So, spoiler-free, what you got?
Well, at first it seems like we're going to watch a confused old man wander around, struggling with a grasp on reality.
It was a little slow getting started.
It did, but once it does, boy, the longer you watch, you realize it's much deeper than that. It's frightening, poignant, horrifying, heart-wrenching, and joyful, sometimes all at the same time. It is beautifully filmed and superbly acted.
It was very good.
Yeah, big thumbs up from both of us on this one.
I would say it's the best thing we've seen all year, but we've only
it's
had
early
2
in the
weeks
year.
this year. Okay,
Yeah.
It's the best thing we've seen in a good while.
Yeah.
Okay, so children run through the bright, foggy woods. It looks like a fun time in the past. Young Ulysses has his eye on young Dahlia. We flash forward to old Ulysses, nearing 90 years old. At one point he says he's 90, but the advertising all says he's about to turn 100. So
We're not sure the exact age.
It's sketchy. He calls for Dahlia, who isn't there right now. He seems confused. Daniel, the superintendent, asks if he's okay, and Ulysses admits that he got lost in the lobby of his own building. His heart thumps painfully from time to time, and there is a mention of some burglaries that have been going on in the building.
And also at this point, too, well, it's soon when he goes to see Dahlia, he congratulates, he comments on the superintendent's wife, oh, your pregnancy, and, she must be getting really big, and goes back to the apartment, and Dahlia's like, the kid's 5 years old now.
Yeah, his memory's not what it should be.
Yeah.
So he goes back into his apartment and gets yelled at by Dahlia, who says they haven't had any food in the place in 2 days. She seems fairly paranoid that the people who run the place want to evict them, but he doesn't believe that that's true. He then goes from room to room, forgetting exactly what he's doing. The two go to bed, but Ulysses complains that his chest hurts. He wakes up later that night hearing things. He sees flashes of someone outside in the courtyard. And at this point already, I'm wondering, is he just senile and imagining everything?
And imagining Dahlia at this point.
We wonder if she's real.
Yeah, well, I mean, real, gone. I mean, she was his wife, but, is she in his mind now?
Is she a ghost or is she a memory?
Yeah, you can't be sure.
Yeah. Suddenly there's a knock on the door. There's a woman out there screams that she needs help. Ulysses and Dahlia are afraid to open the door because, old people. She's Elena, the neighbor from upstairs, and Dahlia says it's a trap. Next, Daniel comes knocking on the door. He's the superintendent, and he says the neighbor, Elena, fell out the upstairs window, and the firemen need to go through his apartment to get to the courtyard. They go back outside and find Elena's body in the courtyard. Ulysses tells Daniel about her coming to his door, and he's sure that she committed suicide. Their son Carlos calls. Daniel called him and told him what happened. Carlos wants him to go to a retirement home, but Ulysses refuses to consider it. Carlos says he's coming to pick them up in the morning. A few minutes later, the whole thing happens again. What? With Elena coming to the door, although this time through, it's a little bit more violent and exciting.
And here's where it starts getting a little more trippy and surreal.
Yeah, this already happened once. He calls Daniel on the phone, who explains that it all happened just a couple hours ago, and it'll all be clear to him in the morning. Ulysses tells Dahlia that if it happens again, he's going to help Elena. Their estranged daughter needed help too. There's something bad between Dahlia and their daughter. She got pregnant, and Dahlia hated the embarrassment. They disowned her, something that Ulysses still regrets. He wants to call her and apologize. Dahlia says he's had his whole life to do that. And I'm going to stop here, because there's a lot more going, and it's a brand new movie, and nobody has seen this yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let it go and not spoil it. If you want to read the whole review with spoilers, horrorguys.com, you'll find it there. All right, well, the real question here is how much of this is supernatural and how much is Ulysses' dementia? Now, a few weeks ago, we slammed on George Romero's The Amusement Park for how terrible it treated the topic of aging. We thought it was just beating us over the head with metaphors.
I was going to use that, beating us over the head. Yeah, exactly.
Not subtle.
This was very subtle.
Yeah, this is how you show how terrifying it is to get old. Not through the silly metaphors, but by actually showing us old people just being old. And, of course, them remembering being young. Almost from her first scene, we wondered if old Dahlia was real or a ghost, or the real or imagined kind of ghost. Just about the time we figure out what the deal really is with Dahlia, then we have to deal with Elena. I would classify this as a dramatic mystery with some horrific elements. If you're looking for a stalker, serial killer, or monster, you won't find it here, but it really is excellent.
Yes.
Pepe Soriano as old Ulysses is awesome. Just frail enough to be pitiful, but still sympathetic in his old age. We really liked Part A, or Side A.
But then
there was Side B.
There was Side B.
Now, we usually do 4 long films and a short, and Nocturna Side B was just a little over an hour, but to be honest, you're probably going to fast forward through a lot of it. So we're going to call this one our short for the week.
And you wouldn't really classify it as a sequel. It's more of a parallel at the same time kind of thing. It's sort of from Elena's point of view,
sort of,
who is an artist and a photographer.
Nocturna Side B, where the elephants go to die.
We didn't like it nearly as much. I mean, I could kind of see what they were trying to do, but yeah, it didn't work for me.
Again, we got the pre-release version of this. I don't know how they're going to sell this. If this was supposedly a second CD that you'd pay for,
or if you see it at the theater, you're going to see one after the other.
To me like
or they're
maybe
going to do
an extra DVD thing.
Maybe, like, just a DVD
things.
extra. Maybe
I sure wouldn't pay for this.
Not by itself, no.
It was a disappointing follow-up to Wonderful Side A. It's a series of images and clips, some strobing with fast words spewed at us, some longer and slower. It's all grainy and distorted like old film or memories. While we think we saw what they were trying to accomplish, we don't recommend it. So what happened?
Well, Elena from the first film narrates, and she talks about photography. Yes, we watch an epilepsy-inducing montage of shots from the first film. Just boom, just a strobing. And then credits roll. Elena describes old Ulysses as if he were the subject of a nature documentary. And there are elephants howling in the background. And there's elephants mentioned in the first movie, too. He talks about elephants, so there's kind of a touch in there. And then we then see many of what appear to be scenes cut from the first film, all kind of sped up and covered in piano music. And we get jumbled scenes of the mysterious man downstairs. And then it follows various segments and scenes of the characters from Part A with more music and more disjointed narration, kind of poetry, kind of, ad-lib poetry sort of narration, voiceover.
And then it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not really a story there.
No,
The first film, Part A, was one of the best things I've seen all year, certainly in my top 10 of 2021 even.
Mm-hmm.
Part B, on the other hand, can easily be dismissed as tedious and completely unnecessarily pretentious crap.
Harsh. Dang.
I'm going to leave it there.
I'm not even going to harsh it that bad.
Okay. Give Part B a try to decide for yourself, but our thought is to save yourself an hour, watch Part A, which we very strongly recommend, and skip Part B, which is meh at best.
Or kind of skim through it like we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which takes us to, I don't know if you call this a classic if it's only from 1980.
Sorta.
Terror Train from 1980, directed by Roger Spottiswoode, written by T.Y. Drake, Daniel Grodnick, Justin Roscoe, stars Ben Johnson, Jamie Lee Curtis in second billing, and Hart Bachner. 1 hour, 37 minutes. If you don't remember this one, there's a trailer you can watch on the show notes.
Jamie Lee Curtis further cementing herself into the screen queen role.
2 years after Halloween, so she was not really what you call a big star yet, but she was definitely on the way.
Oh, yeah.
So you can just tell somebody sat back one day and thought, what if you took Halloween and put it on a train with lots of magic tricks and silly costumes? That's pretty much it.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Although it's a pretty solid 1980 horror film, it's starting to look a little dated for modern viewers.
A little. It's a quasi-classic.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely good.
Yeah.
It's just getting a little dated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's New Year's Eve at the frat house. We meet various annoying teenagers, one of whom is Elena, who looks suspiciously like Jamie Lee Curtis. They've set something up where Kenny, the nerdy kid, is supposed to go to her room and have sex. Instead, they've substituted a corpse from the medical school. Kenny is not amused. Credits roll.
He goes right out of his head is what happens.
3 years later, the whole gang is taking a senior trip by train. We see this mostly the same group of annoying kids. The conductor complains that there's no radio on the train. That might come in important later.
Yep. They mentioned that for a reason.
As they all board the train, we see that the class clown has already been murdered on the station platform and rolled under the train's wheels.
And the killer took his mask and costume.
It's a New Year's Eve thing, so lots of people are wearing masks and costumes. Funny, these are all medical students, but only one guy's named Doc. Doc tells some freshmen the story of what happened to Kenny in their freshman year. Alana comes in, and she's not proud of that prank. Poor Kenny wound up in the hospital, and she still regrets that. Unbeknownst to Alana and Doc, the other seniors are being killed one by one. There's a magician who entertains the passengers. The conductor does some crappy magic tricks as well.
Well, his are really just jokes.
Yeah.
They're not really magic. The other guy's, it's David Copperfield playing him, so he's really doing the sleight of hand and real magic stuff.
Doc wonders, who hired a magician? I didn't hire a magician. Meanwhile, the conductor finds a mutilated body in the restroom. When he calls in the other conductor to look, the blood is gone and so is the body. You ever notice in these movies how fast somebody can clean up blood?
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
The conductor then finds Mitchie's body and shows it to Alana. Doc finds Moe's body. Doc pulls the emergency brake cord, but the train doesn't slow down. The conductor races to the front of the train, but there's no one there. He stops the train manually and wonders what happened to the engineer. We never really do find out. With the train stopped, they do a car-to-car search for the killer. Alana tells Doc that she thinks it might be Kenny from that prank a few years ago. That means the two of them are all that's left as his targets. Doc locks himself in a cabin, but the killer's in there too. Alana tells the conductor that the magician is the killer. The train gets back underway, but now everyone knows there's a killer on board. The conductor locks the magician in a car by himself, but hey, he is a magician after all. The conductor goes back in after him, and he's gone. The killer comes after Alana, but she stabs him in the back. He chases her, and she screams. She locks herself in a cage, and he tries to get in, but she stabs him again. She ends up pushing him off the train. Of course, that's not the end of it. We see the masked killer through a window, clinging to the side of the train. How'd he do that? Alana soon finds...
Determination.
Yeah. Alana soon finds the magician's body. Guess it wasn't him after all.
No longer a suspect.
She's soon face-to-face with Kenny, who had been masquerading as the magician's assistant. The conductor whacks him with a shovel, knocks him out of the train for real this time, off a very high bridge. He falls onto the ice, through the ice, washes down the river. That was pretty thorough.
You know, and it's funny, there was one point in the movie, the magician's assistant is a female, apparently, a female assistant. Kenny is in drag. And there was a point in the movie where the magician does a trick where he holds the big cloth up in front of him and poof, he becomes her, you know. And the way it was shot, I think, is that him? Is that David Copperfield in drag? Because that shot, because that one shot, the way it was angled and, you know, broad shoulders or something, I don't know, tipped me off. Like, that's a guy in drag, it looks like.
And it was
the magician's assistant. Okay, no, it wasn't him, but it was a him.
Yeah, it was, yeah. One of those things you thought you were wrong, but you really weren't.
I was right, yeah.
Okay, well, I like the conversations between the engineer and conductor about the future of rail travel. Passenger trains are still a thing, but not the futuristic vision that the engineer had. Okay, so what's up with all the magic tricks? How many college medical students would actually want to hire a stage magician to perform on their train ride? And was David Copperfield that big of a draw in 1980 that they felt the need to shoehorn him into a horror movie?
I think there was. Yeah, I think he was.
He was really big for a while.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And he's still alive and hasn't done anything on TV in decades. I wonder what happened there.
Don't know what the story is there.
This is a fairly by-the-numbers slasher film. This time around, the killer puts on the costume of his most recent victim, so he looks different for each death. The whole thing being set on a train is an interesting feature as well. Otherwise, it's looking a little dated. It's not exactly a train wreck, but it is slower paced than a real passenger train.
But all in all, a thumbs up.
Yeah, it's good. And now, we get off the train and go back in time to 1957 to watch a double feature.
Attack of the Crab Monsters.
You think these were at the drive-in, or were these at like the old movie house?
Yes.
Yes.
Both.
One or the other.
Probably both.
Not of This Earth, 1957. Directed by Roger Corman, written by Charles B. Griffith and Mark Hanna. Stars Paul Birch, mostly. Mostly? There's a story there.
Yeah.
Beverly Garland, Morgan Jones, hour and 7 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. All right. What'd you think?
I liked it. And got to say I liked it better than the Crab Monsters. Of the two, this was far better. Far more entertaining to me.
I'm going to go the opposite route. I like the Crab Monsters better.
Really? Huh. Okay.
Okay, so what happens?
Well, girl walks home from her date and is confronted by a strange man in sunglasses. She screams and passes out. The man drains her blood into a machine. The man has white eyes. Wild guess, but I'd say he is not of this earth.
Ooh, see how they fit that in there?
Yep, credits roll. Well, the man with the suitcase full of blood goes to the hospital for a transfusion. He says his name is Paul Johnson. He refuses to get a blood type test. He cuts himself and says it will bleed later. Johnson hypnotizes...
He ain't got time to bleed.
Yeah, no. Well, Johnson hypnotizes Dr. Rochelle and forces him to keep his information secret.
It was this deal, you can talk about me, but don't tell anyone any of my secrets. It's like Magic HIPAA.
Yeah. Yeah, he has a compulsion to not... yeah, so he can study this alien... but he has to keep it to himself, and he knows
later on too. When people ask him about it, he's very evasive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, painfully so. Yeah. Well, Johnson then hires Nurse Nadine as his personal nurse. Johnson goes home, tells his servant Jeremy to...
Wait a minute, his name is Johnson, and he just hired Nurse Nadine. Are you sure this isn't a porno?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Maybe there's a porno version out there somewhere. But anyway, he's got blood problems, super anemic, and not feeling well. He keeps having to, get more blood infused. Johnson goes home. Oh, and what the doctor, wasn't it that his blood is literally decomposing or something? Yeah.
It's like breaking down slowly, so he needs to replace it.
Well, he goes home and tells Jeremy to prepare a room for Nadine. He puts several bottles of blood in the fridge. Johnson speaks in a stilted, uncomfortably formal accent, which I thought was
1950s would call a robot voice.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of cool. He's impersonating a human and
very formal speaking.
Not doesn't know our ways and means, and yeah. Well, Nadine arrives and he locks her in her bedroom. Nadine's boyfriend Harry is a cop.
Uh-oh.
Johnson uses a communication device to phone home to his commander on the planet Divana. He's there to study humans and send blood home. I guess they're all having issues dying, and they think that human blood can fortify them and save them if they get the science right.
Would take an awful lot of blood.
So he's there studying humans. There are several phases to the plan, and Phase 5 is conquest, followed by obliteration of the planet, where they take over Earth. But first they have to find a way to survive and survive on Earth. Well, a vacuum cleaner salesman comes to the door, and Johnson invites him in. Salesmen are full of blood.
They are.
Yeah. Johnson drains him dry and puts the body in his incinerator. He tells Jeremy to fight 3 homeless bums to dinner tonight. Yes, politically incorrect. Yeah. Rochelle returns, and he has many questions about Johnson's blood. His blood is different from any man on Earth. His blood is breaking down and evaporating. The doctor thinks he can continue with more research and help. Johnson is aware of this, admitting that he will die if the process is not halted. So his time is limited. Well, Jeremy brings the bums over as ordered, and soon they end up drained in the incinerator. And Jeremy's not under hypnotic control or anything. He's just being paid a lot of money to be a manservant and chauffeur and whatever guy.
And we're told earlier on that he's got criminal records. So he's a little bit on the shady side.
Yeah, Nadine's boyfriend recognizes him.
He'll do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and Johnson knows this. Yeah. Well, the police are finding bodies with neck wounds like a vampire, and all the blood's drained. Well, it's him and his machine. Jeremy notices that the bums came in, but they never left. Johnson drinks a strange liquid instead of food. Nadine sneaks a sample to Dr. Rochelle to analyze, and it's a perfect food substitute.
Now, you see, Dr. Rochelle's not allowed to talk about Johnson's health issues, but he doesn't know that this is his food. So he just does the analysis, and he tells her everything he knows about it because he doesn't realize the two are connected.
Yep. So that's a loophole in the hypnosis. A woman comes through the portal from Divana and gives Johnson bad news about the wars at home. She explains that they cannot go home. And not only that, but she'll die in 4 days without a transfusion. He's been getting transfusions all the way.
So he's like, I'll help you out.
Yeah, we can help each other. Well, Johnson gives her canine blood, but it's also rabies infected.
Which he knew.
You think he did?
Oh, yeah, he wanted her out of the way.
Okay, all right. I didn't quite pick up on that he did it on purpose.
Well, why
You know.
didn't he take the rabies blood himself? Because he knew what it would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was not an
You're
accident.
right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. She passes out in front of Dr. Rochelle's office. She soon dies from rabies. Harry is there too, and he thinks there's a connection between her and Johnson. Nadine and Jeremy search the house looking for anything out of place. They're getting really suspicious of this guy now. They stumble upon his communication and teleport machine. Jeremy finds skulls in the furnace.
Nothing sketchy about that.
Yeah. They come to the conclusion that Johnson is from another planet. Johnson is onto them and kills Jeremy. Nadine escapes. Johnson regenerates a freeze-dried flying creature to assist him, like something from his planet. The thing flies through the air, kills Dr. Rochelle. Johnson pursues Nadine through the park in his car and then on foot. He catches up with her and commands her to go home and enter through the portal as a sample for Divana. Well, there's a problem with the transport, too, where
It's one way.
yeah, it's one way, and he tried sending a whole person already, and they ended up pulp.
Yeah.
So she's doomed. So there's a bit of suspense. Is she gonna?
Well, I
be
think he's
forced
hoping that if he sends enough people through, somebody might make it.
Yeah, that's what he's hoping for. Yeah. Harry chases Johnson down the road. Johnson crashes his car and dies, breaking his control over Nadine just in time. She was about to teleport herself.
Yeah. Well, this is really a weird movie because halfway through the main actor Paul Birch quit.
He had a snit, apparently. And
I am a great actor, and I'm in this crap. What is
well,
wrong with you people?
it was probably more than halfway through.
Yeah.
But you can see later scenes where
He's
they're
got a double
careful
in the
about
dark.
showing him too clearly, and you can still tell it's not Paul Birch anymore.
And the big chase through the park, she's running through the woods, and there's a car chasing her. You don't see who's driving the car because he's not there anymore.
But you can sometimes, well, and it helped too because he always wore the dark sunglasses because of his eyes and a hat. And, that helped. But, a couple times, clearly, that's not him.
Yeah. So after about the 45-minute point, you can see that he's been replaced by a double in several of the dimly lit scenes. It starts out interestingly enough, but in my opinion at least, it quickly devolves into a chase through the woods. Without Paul Birch, they had to end the whole thing in an impersonal car crash, which is another thing. You don't see him die, you just see the car explode, which was far too abrupt and over too quickly. I think his disappearance kind of killed it. They probably could have come up with a much better ending with him there.
I think they could have, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I liked it.
Okay.
I give it a thumbs up.
It's definitely worth watching. I did like it.
I give it a bigger thumbs up than the Crab Creatures.
Oh, my. Which takes us to the Attack of the Crab Monsters. Came out at the same time. It was literally part of a double feature with the previous movie. Directed by Roger Corman, written by Charles B. Griffith. Stars Richard Garland, Pamela Duncan, and Russell Johnson. Hour and 3 minutes. Trailer in the usual place. Yeah, we got a spoiler-free thing here for you.
Giant radioactive, telepathic, mind-absorbing, morphing crabs.
Ooh.
And they're big. Yeah. Did I mention giant? Yeah. Well, some of them. They use little normal-sized crabs as their drones kind of too, which I thought was a neat touch. What will the atomic age think of next? This was an era when atoms and atomic stuff could make monsters and was scary and yeah. Well, this one mashes too many things together, weaves them together with bad science, doesn't have a great script. It's watchable and kind of entertaining, but not a praiseworthy classic.
Okay. Well, I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah, kind of entertaining.
It's a very straightforward, plain, by-the-book monster movie. It's not great, but it's not as bad as it might sound from the title.
It's certainly watchable and entertaining, yeah.
Okay, so a group of people disembark from their dinghy onto a deserted, inhospitable island. There had been a previous expedition here, and we're told that it went badly. This group has brought along a surprisingly large amount of dynamite and several cases of hand grenades.
Those might come in handy later.
One of the men falls overboard, and we see that there's something down there with big, hungry eyes. Except it's not exactly a deserted island. There appears to be something like an abandoned motel there. Yeah, I was figuring like Gilligan's Island, and
No, it's like a former touristy place.
Well, Hank explains that a lot of atomic radiation from the H-bomb test landed here and may have had something to do with the plant and animal life. He describes and introduces each of the 5 scientists in the expedition for us, one after the other as they appear on screen. So we get to know who everybody is pretty easily. As the airplane leaves, it explodes.
Ruh-oh.
Why?
Uh-oh.
We don't know.
Crabs did it. The giant telepathic crabs.
Yeah.
Well, that was my take on it. That they metal powered it. They did that.
Well, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There's no better explanation.
Yeah.
Well, they read Dr. McLean's journal, the only remnant of the previous group who completely vanished. They all notice the strange little earthquakes that keep shaking the island. Next morning, Dr. Hunter goes down in her scuba suit to look at the undersea life. They don't see any unusual life forms, but she does see a rock that she thinks she sees moving. That night, she hears McLean's voice calling to her. Dr. Carson hears the voice as well, and he climbs down the cliff face to investigate. We hear him scream off-screen.
Crabs got him.
Meanwhile, back at the base, Dale and Martha are attacked by a monster that tunneled in somehow. The thing deliberately destroys their radio. We don't see much of it. Martha notices that there was a mountain in the distance yesterday, but today it's gone. They go back into the caves looking for Carson, but have to stop when Jules loses a hand. Chop, chop.
Mm-hmm.
2 of the seamen are attacked, and soon Jules hears their voices in the night. He follows their voices to the pit until he's killed by a giant crab claw. Soon the others hear his voice. In the morning, they find the seamen are missing and presumed eaten, but a big portion of the dynamite is gone too. What do giant telepathic crabs need with dynamite? The voice returns and reveals that he can talk through any metal object. The 3 men return to the caves where they find a giant crab. Dr. Weigand explains his theory about how the mutant crabs can absorb people's minds and melt solid stone.
Yeah, and one of the one of the people who actually got absorbed, it's kind of it reminded me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of thing, where they're, after they get converted, saying, but this is good.
Oh yeah,
yes, you'll like this. Don't fight it. We're happy here, along those lines.
Martha notices from the photos that the female crab is pregnant. How can you tell? Oh well.
Because science. She's a scientist.
All right. Hank figures out that electricity will kill the crab. They go down to place the machines and find the female creature asleep. They wake it up, and it pursues them underwater. The monster taunts them with Carson's voice. Hank builds a new radio and tries to contact someone for rescue. They have to hurry as the island is getting smaller and smaller due to the crab's destruction. They find oil in the caves, and Dale ignites it, but not before the crab kills Dr. Weigand. The earthquakes intensify as the island sinks into the sea. Hank pulls down the radio tower and electrocutes the final crab monster in the fastest, most out-of-the-blue ending ever.
And, and a thought just occurred to me. It's something that, it's Roger Corman, I think, who was part of his doing. For movies from this era, both of these have smart, strong, professional women in them. Mm-hmm. Which, for that era, so many of these movies, I'm thinking of The Thing, and
not your
some of the others.
Scream queens.
Yeah, they're coffee girls. They're just there to look good and make coffee for the guys. And here they're actually career women and smart, capable. I don't know. For that era, especially, it's something they have in common.
Yeah, the woman here was actually the smartest scientist of the group.
Yeah.
And
it was, and Nadine was a professional nurse and very smart, very capable.
Unlike something like Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
What was that girl even doing there? I don't remember.
She was there to look good, I think, and be the romantic interest.
Yeah.
The damsel in distress.
So a few years later, times have changed.
Yeah, these aren't just the damsels in distress in these movies.
Okay, well, the crab monster, it starts out really good. It's got good pacing, interesting characters, decent acting, and it's blissfully short. but it's saddled by ridiculous-looking creatures and an even sillier concept. Toward the end, the script goes way off the rails as well, with far too much explanation and exposition. The actual crab monsters don't move very much, but otherwise they do look like big crabs. Suspension of disbelief is one matter, but I just can't wrap my head around all those big fat scientists climbing up a rope.
They did move up and down those ropes easily for not being very athletic looking.
And then one guy, he's in worse shape than I was from the look of it, climbs up a rope. That always looks so easy in movies.
They do make it look easy in movies, yeah.
Oh, and that ending. You know they just completely ran out of ideas and budget.
But they wrapped it up.
Yeah, they did. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's our show for this week. Thanks for joining us. Stop in during the week at horrorguys.com for news and horror updates, to comment on the newsletter, or contact us. Sign up for the newsletter at horrorbulletin.com. It's got its own URL now, and you'll get all 5 of our main podcast reviews and a couple of bonus ones every week. And, let's see, last week, we watched Jaws last week, didn't we?
I like sharks.
Dun-dun, dun-dun. Dun, 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 dun. Next week, we're not going to tell you which ones. Let's just say Shark Week.
Horror Guys Personal Shark Week.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Yes, Shark Week, proving to one and all that there's no barrel we won't scrape the bottom of.